So today we're talking about the November election, concentrating on Orange County, but also the California races, our congressional races, our local races. First, we have to start with why voting is important. Understand that all of those national political things you see on social media, in the news, when you're talking to people complaining about our society, why can't we have nice things? It's because of voting. It is quite simply because policy choices are made by those who are elected. And the way to get better policy choices is to elect the people who support you on these issues. Reproductive rights all across the country, it's on the ballot. Police brutality is on the ballot with your county enforcement attorney generals, district attorneys, the sheriff, your police chief chosen by the city council. Your city council has a tremendous amount of power about what happens in your community, the roads, the parks, police, fire, how the money is spent, what is invested, and public education, of course, makes all of these decisions about teaching ethnic studies in an honest, community-based way to represent the people in the classroom, hearing their stories, and that representation is so important. LGBTQ protection, book banning is on the ballot for these school boards. All of these sorts of things, clean air, environment, climate crisis, they're all affordable housing, tuition increases, rent control, it's all on the ballot. So you need to be informed and engaged in what decisions you're making and how it impacts the policy choices that you want. Let's talk about June. We have the turnout numbers. Often we don't do kind of a retrospective of what happened and what we learned. But we learned some pretty stark things from the June election. The first is that old white people showed up to vote. I'm one of them. I vote routinely, habitually, almost religiously. It is a holiday in my house to actually cover the election and to vote in the election. So this is registration numbers, ballots mailed out. Everyone in the state of California was mailed a ballot, and then who returned it. So we look and we see almost 10 million California voters are registered with the Democratic Party. 6 million either choose not to belong to a party or they belong to a party that isn't either the Republican or Democratic Party. The Republican Party has 5 million, so half as many as the Democrats. Now, Independent and Republican combined match the Democrats, but look at what happened in turnout. 51% of the ballots were cast by the Democrats in the June election. Independents, the folks who weren't being called by political parties, motivated by political parties, those get out to vote efforts absolutely worked on both the Republican and the Democratic side. And so you see that Democrats turned out 28%, Republicans turned out 30%, and independents, NPP, those no party preference folks, were 18%, so a much lower turnout. Then let's go down to age. Demographics are clear. Young people 18 to 34 are the largest block of registered voters. So I've done a really good job with a whole lot of other people of registering people to vote. Registering young people to vote. Our motor voter, our civics classes, registration efforts, that has done a very good job, and they are the largest group of registered voters in the state of California. However, we have done a terrible job with civic education. We have done a terrible job of informing and engaging young people to understand why voting matters. And so it was 11% turnout. Horrific, even in a low information election where a lot of people didn't turn out. Old folks, 65 and older, 50 to 64 in that group, 73% of the votes cast in June were cast by somebody over the age of 50 or 50. So very, very skewed. Because the demographics in California are so skewed, old people are white. 69% of all the ballots cast were cast by white people in California. When you're talking about a state as diverse as California, where white folks aren't even the largest ethnic group in the state of California, that's Latina, Latinx. On electorate, on election day, those numbers are absolutely clear. Because older Californians vote, turnout is overwhelmingly white. 7 out of 10 ballots were cast by folks who are white. So what do? Well, we have to engage and inform young people about voting, about why it's important. Political science will talk about voter efficacy. You're more likely to vote if you believe your vote matters. Clearly, there are some people in our society who absolutely believe their vote matters, and other people who we need to really reach out to and educate about that. Orange County, let's dial it in a little bit. Look at the map to see overall voter turnout, 35%. Orange County had some high-profile elections that were definitely driving turnout. The green is over 70%. Most of those precincts are very, very tiny. Yellow is 50 to 70% voter turnout. The orange is 30 to 50, and then the pink is 0 to 30% turnout. Again, some of these are pretty low, sparsely populated, but a lot of dense population here. And so if you overlaid an OC equity map, you would see dense population. You would see a lot of socioeconomic challenges and a lot of young people who are very diverse and did not show up to vote. So we have some work to do. Okay, let's talk about what's actually on the ballot in November. 3 types of elections. First, a runoff election. That's where those top 2 candidates from the June election advance to November, and then we select between the 2. A lot of those are Democrat and Republican matchups, but there are some Democrat versus Democrat. There are a couple of Republican versus Republican in safe Republican areas of the state. Statewide elections, Congress, state legislature, those are all partisan races where you see the R and the D for the Republican and Democratic candidate. County offices, we have a runoff in Los Angeles City with the mayor's race, the sheriff's race, district attorneys across the state, sheriffs across the state, Orange County. All of those were decided decisively in June. We had 9 Orange County Superior Court judges, and 1 of them went to a runoff. The other 8 based on incumbency, based on ballot designation. A lot of people won that June election. Retention elections, these are new to this ballot, not new in general. The progressives of the 20th century decided that we needed to hold judges accountable on the ballot. I believe that time is done. California Supreme Court and district judges, appellate justices, don't have competitive. You can't run against a Supreme Court justice. You can't run against a circuit court judge or a district judge, but they do have to appear on the ballot. And so every 2 years, we get a little class of justices that appear every 12 years, and they are non-competitive. So we only vote yes or no. I'll show you the ballot for that. Then the rest of the ballot measures to come, but the first past the post plurality elections, community college boards, city council, school boards, these are all, there could be 5, there could be 10, there could be 20, there could be 2 people running on the ballot, and whoever gets the most votes wins. So plurality, not a majority, no runoff. We'll talk a little bit about whether or not we should have ranked choice voting here, because there are some perverse incentives of gathering spoiler candidates and splitting the vote. So there's some shenanigans that go on behind the scenes that a lot of voters don't know about. So this is our statewide elections matchup, Democrat versus Republican in almost every race. Board of Equalization, we'll talk about in a little bit, but that's a Democrat versus a Democrat. Superintendent of Public Instruction is a nonpartisan race, but Tony Thurmond is a Democrat and Lance Ray Christensen is a Republican. That's not a secret. If you go to their endorsement pages, it's huge pages of folks from those same political parties. The interesting thing on this page is there's only one non-incumbent. The controller's office, Betty Yee, was termed out of office. And so that's an open seat. Leah Cohen, who has served on the Board of Equalization and San Francisco politics, is running as a Democrat. She was one of the top 2 to advance to November. And then Republican Lan Hee Chen, who advanced to November and has actually been endorsed by the Los Angeles Times. And a lot of people are saying that that's the race to watch because we're not sure what will happen. Again, going back to that first slide with the registration numbers, almost 10 million registered Democrats, 5 million and change registered Republicans. If people vote based on that shortcut of just looking for the Democrat and voting for them, this will be Cohen's race to lose. But I'm not sure how people are going to be voting. David Dodson, a Democrat versus Democrat, getting a lot of attention, partially because of how awful his opponent is. And we'll talk about that when we talk about, if you don't know anything about an election, leave it blank. The other little footnote here is that you're going to see the United States Senator race twice on your ballot. One is a short term to fill that position from November to January. Because it's a replacement, Padilla was appointed to fulfill the term of Kamala Harris's Senate seat that was 6 years. She obviously elected Vice President of the United States. Gavin Newsom appointed Padilla until the election. And so without that little fix Band-Aid, California wouldn't have a senator from November to January because of the tight nature of a 50-50 Senate. That could mean that Mitch McConnell was majority leader for the short term before January. Depending on what happens in the election, he may be the majority leader anyway. We shall see what happens there. But President pro tem of the Senate and President of the Senate are ceremonial roles, and the majority leader actually makes decisions. So that's the statewide elections. These are the retention elections. Whole long list. The Chief Justice of California, who was just recently appointed, has to be on the ballot. These presiding judges for 4th District have to be on the ballot. I'm leaving out the judge for the Superior Court and Superintendent of Public Instruction. We'll talk about those separately. But these retention elections, I get a lot of questions about who are you voting for retention elections? How do I find out information? I skip it. I do not vote for these. I'm philosophically opposed to votes that don't matter. And by that, I mean the very first time I voted for these judges, before the internet, I spent a lot of time researching and trying to find out and talking to people and asking people and trying to research the cases that they had heard and doing my due diligence to be an informed voter. I found a couple of justices that I didn't agree with. I voted against them, filling out my little no ballot, and they routinely win with 95% of the vote. I think the lowest any justice has gotten is 80%. So my little meager protest to this is I really think that we should fundamentally change these races. I would love to see an advisory board. I would love to see oversight, a place to complain if a justice is ill or incompetent or malfeasance or whatever the problem is. But the voters just are not going to have that information. There's no campaign against someone when it's just a yes, no vote. There's no candidate running against with an incentive to try to campaign. I would like it to see just that we retain the right to recall a justice, that if there is a problem that is brought to the attention of the media, of the public, of the politic, that we could recall a justice either on the circuit court or the California Supreme Court. That would generate a lot more attention. There would be more media attention. There would be the kind of more of a public discourse about whether that person should stay or leave. That's the power I would like to retain as a voter, but I skip it. I will not throw my vote away of just voting yes because everybody else votes yes. And so you have my permission to skip that. For judge for Superior Court, really important. These are absolutely important decisions and you should research them and you should vote. Orange County has a start choice, and you can see from the long list of endorsements, bipartisan endorsements, and on my podcast, you can listen to my interview with Michelle Bell and my interview with Jodi, who is the other commissioner who was on the ballot in June, about what a commissioner does. It's almost a judge on the Superior Court. They apply, they are chosen by the entire bench in the county, and there are background checks. So somebody who is a commissioner is eminently qualified, and definitely. Peggy Wong, Deputy Attorney General of the state of California. That doesn't mean she's a prosecutor. Everybody in that office gets that ballot designation. So look at their websites, compare them. That's what democracy is. You get to vote for who you support. But I do think that these are important races. Superintendent of Public Instruction, same thing. You want to look at what their vision is, who their endorsements are, what they want to do as the head chief officer for the state of California's education system. So can't emphasize this enough. Research your ballot. cavotes.org is going to take you to the League of Women Voters. They have Voters Edge, which you type in your address and you get your ballot with comparisons of those candidates. Attend candidate forums. One of the most important things that League of Women Voters, your community, sometimes it's Chamber of Commerce, sometimes it's other organizations in your community who are doing candidate forums and bringing together an opportunity to meet with the candidates. Look at their ballot statements. There's a lot of, dog whistle messages that are being communicated in those ballot statements. Look at their endorsements. Who's endorsing them? Are they people you trust? Are they organizations you trust? Research. Just do a simple media archive where you go on the Voice of OC, you go on the Orange County Register, the Los Angeles Times, type their name in and see what comes back. That's a simple way to look. But most of all, when in doubt, leave it blank. It is no shame in not voting for every single office on the ballot. This is California Votes with Voters Edge. League of Women Voters does a lot of research and collects that information from the candidates themselves. They are nonpartisan. They do not endorse candidates, but they do try to inform and engage the voters. So endorsements, look at who's endorsing them. Look at their websites, look at their mailers. Those mailers are really expensive. So look at who's paying for those mailers and how much they're spending. When we talk about the ballot measures, Proposition 26 and Proposition 27 have spent $500 million on advertising, pro and con, just a tremendous amount of money. Organizations, political parties that you join, that you trust, inform family and friends. A lot of times people will share their own endorsements with you, who they're supporting. But search the archives, Voice of OC, Orange County Register. Orange Juice blog in Orange County has a lot of really good information. My podcast, where I interview a lot of the candidates and talk to people. But most important, when in doubt, leave it blank. There's no penalty for leaving offices. There's no penalty for leaving ballot measures or propositions blank. You can vote for what you know. And then when you have time, when you get more engaged, when you are more informed, you can vote for other things. But get started. It's a good habit to have in, and make a goal for yourself of how many of those offices you're going to research, because I'll give you a cautionary tale. Not everybody does research, and they vote for some pretty bad people who have gotten elected in our community. Judge Ron Klein, Scott Steiner, who's still on the bench even after he admitted to having sex with women in his chamber, got reelected this year in 2022. He wasn't even challenged. He just won another 6-year term. Steve Rocco on the ballot for the Rancho Santiago Community College District. Vote John Hanna for all my friends that are at Santa Ana College and Rancho Santiago, San Diego Canyon College there. But Ron Klein was charged with possessing child porn, a huge problem. Mike Schaefer, who's on the ballot in November 2022, Board of Equalization. He was elected in 2018. He's been endorsed by the California Democratic Party for reasons I do not understand, because here is his very long list of what would seem to be disqualifying practices and convictions. Convicted of spousal abuse, disbarred in 2 states, convicted of assault and battery, alleged harassment of a 77-year-old woman. He was cited for slumlord conditions in the apartment buildings, and just for fun, he stalked and harassed Brad Garrett from Everybody Loves Raymond. So, okay. So what's on your ballot? A lot of you will have different districts. And so in Orange County, we've redistricted. And so what the congressional maps look like are very different now. And so a lot of people, young Kim was in North Orange County, and now it's just a little piece of Brea and Yorba Linda, and then swings all the way down to what used to be Katie Porter's district. Mike Levin is still relatively in the same spot, but Katie Porter has been moved over to she chose to run in District 47. Michelle Steele moved out of 48 up to this new district that was created, 45, that kind of circles around Lou Correa's district in 46. So you'll see these folks, Young Kim and Asif Mahmood, Michelle Steele versus Jade Chen, Lou Correa versus Christopher Gonzalez, Mike Levin versus Republican Brian Marriott. These are all Republican versus Democrat seats, and they are close. It's going to be very close elections, lots of money being spent on both sides. Lou Correa is relatively safe, so less money in that seat. California Senate, the legislature in Sacramento, Josh Newman versus Dave Min is what we expect the race to be in 2024, but that's not for another election cycle. The rest are Republican versus Democrat in these different parts of Orange County. So those match up. Some of them are safe for one political party or another. Some of them are going to be competitive. California Assembly, same idea. We've moved a lot of the district lines around, and so we've got a matchup. One of the most interesting is where we have two incumbents running against each other, a Democrat versus a Republican. Both have been elected before. So, very well-funded, very well-experienced folks on how to win elections. 71 is a safe Republican seat all the way out to Marietta and Temecula. So 2 Republicans, that's the benefit of that top 2 primary, where in a safe district, voters have some choice. And so we'll see what happens. Almost certainly Phil Chen will win this incumbent, running against somebody who no Democrat challenged him. And so Leon Sitt, a UCLA student, stepped up and said nobody should be unchallenged. And so he won a few hundred votes, I think 500 some odd votes, and made the top 2 primary as a result. So he'll be on the ballot, and we'll probably pick up quite a few protest votes, folks who don't want to vote for the Republican in that election. But I don't think we're expecting an upset there. Orange County doesn't have any runoffs for the county offices. So Don Barnes didn't even have a challenger. Todd Spitzer easily won. And so these are the folks that'll serve for another 4 years in the county of Orange. The election rules matter. Some of our city councils and school boards have district elections, and some have at-large elections. The California Voting Rights Act is pushing us, along with a well-paid lawyer, Kevin Schenkman, who is forcing some of that onto localities who are resisting. So there's some court cases. Cypress and Irvine are in court trying to defend their right to have at-large voting like Brea, also resisting district elections, just to have all 5 seats split up into 2 elections. So in 2022, there are 3 city council seats on the ballot. In 2024, the remaining 2 at-large seats where the entire city. I have a personal preference for this as a voter, because that means I get to vote in every election. And over 4 years, I vote for all 5 of the seats that are held in the city of Brea, my hometown. So Anaheim has gone to districts, and rightfully so. That's a city that definitely needed to. It's huge geographically, and the folks who were getting elected were all kind of congregated from East Anaheim. So this makes sense. And so they have district-based, and that means that whichever of these districts you live in is where you vote, and you only vote 1 city council person to represent you every 4 years. So 2022, districts 2, 3, and 6, plus the citywide at-large mayor. So that's where Ashley Aiken is running again. Trevor O'Neill is likely the kind of second person in vote getting. 1 and 2 will be interested to see who wins in that race. He's kind of an acolyte of Harry Sadu, who is under FBI investigation for a lot of play-for-play, pay-for-play activities and corruption. The cabal of Anaheim kind of ran the city behind the scenes. And so we shall see what the voters of Anaheim decide to do with those races. City council elections, if you're interested of who's running on the ballot, I'll just go through and show you the names and not go through them each individually. But you can find all of this information at OC Vote, the Orange County Register of Voters. If you're in a different county, you can look that up on your county registrar. Community college districts, really important races that almost nobody pays attention to. But the North Orange County Community College District, Fullerton College's district, has two races. And so the incumbents, Barbara Dunsheath and Jeffrey Brown, are running, and they're challengers. So Blaise Bentz and Jessica Rutan are running against. And then school districts, really important. School districts are hugely important races, and particularly this election cycle, really important. So kind of those are the folks. The reason that they are important, and wherever you fall on this side, it's fine. That's democracy. You can vote for them. If you support charter schools that are trying to remove students from the public education, parent choice, there is a movement. There is a strong network of folks who want to do that. They're running for election in Orange, Tustin, Fullerton, and Placentia or Belinda to establish this network of charter schools called the Orange County Classical Academy. And I personally, you don't have to agree with me, am opposed to this charter school because it takes money away from public education and gives it to the curriculum that they're using, which is straight from the Hillsdale College, a small liberal arts college in Michigan, that's using the 1776 curriculum from the Trump administration that doesn't cover climate change, that doesn't cover ethnic studies, that doesn't cover a true historical foundation of our nation, doesn't have a lot of critical analysis of the mistakes that we have made and how we can work to improve our nation and our community and be more representative, not less. And so if that is what you want to see in education, there is a candidate on these ballots for you. If you look at endorsements in your school district, these are the names that are likely to appear for those candidates who want to see the Classical Academy. There's one operating in Orange. There's one operating that's going to open soon in Placentia or Belinda. The Orange County Board of Education is approving a lot of these without local control, without the local school board, without the parents really being involved. So obviously parents would have to enroll their children. It's not mandatory and it's not coercive, but this does take money away. The public education dollars would be diverted to the charter schools. And I'm not in any way opposed to charter schools that work within our public education system. OSHA, I had a number of friends who have just loved the Orange County Performing Arts School, School of the Arts, both the junior high and the high school. There are some really good charter schools in our county, but this seems very much politically motivated to remove their kids from the curriculum that they don't want, that is state approved. So just a warning for those of you who have a choice. There were 9 Orange County judges races. 8 of them were decided pretty definitively. Again, those old white voters in June pretty definitively liked the ballot designation of deputy district attorney. And so even though, Sean Nelson was an administrator in that office, because he had that designation, he won, even though, he hasn't been a prosecutor. He was a politician at Fullerton City Council and Orange County Board of Supervisors, but kind of got that halo effect of the prosecution of the district attorney. One of the reasons that I'm a little hesitant to think that this is a good idea, deputy DAs are overrepresented on our court system. The vast majority of our courts are civil, dealing with marriage, dealing with business, dealing with civil tort cases, contract cases. And I don't know that we need everybody who sees the world through the prosecutorial lens, not to criticize these individuals in any way, but voters tend to keep electing the same type of judge rather than broadening the perspectives on the bench. So when you get a chance, think about that. The one runoff, there were 5 people running. The one runoff is Michelle Bell versus Peggy Wong that I talked about earlier. I encourage you greatly to go to candidate forums and to meet the candidates, to look online. the League of Women Voters or the cities are trying to record these as much as possible. Local media, the Voice of OC, Fullerton Observer, there are a lot of local independent media outlets that are trying to cover these races. And so hopefully you can go and meet your candidates. Fullerton College students have the opportunity to do that on Monday, October 17th. At Fullerton College, room 224, 226, 228, right upstairs, the dining hall from 5:30 to 7:30, Monday, October 17th. You can come and actually sit at a table and ask questions and meet meet Dave Dodson, who's running against the disbarred incumbent who already has the job. You can meet Michelle Bell, you can meet Peggy Wong, who are running for judge. You can meet the supervisors running for Orange County supervisor. Everybody who's on the ballot in Fullerton was invited. And I know that's not everybody. I know a lot of people live outside of Fullerton, but I only have so many tables and chairs. So that's going to be what we do. You can meet somebody running for city council and school board. Orange County has 3 races for Orange County supervisor. North Orange County is here with Sunny Park and Doug Chafee running against each other. Even though they're nonpartisan, these are 2 Democrats running. Vincent Sarmiento from Santa Ana and Kim Bernice-Wynn, both Democrats running. And then down here in District 5, a district that leans Republican, and Pat Bates is a Republican running against Katrina Foley, who's a Democrat. So this is kind of the only partisan battle. The rest are going to, some Democrat is going to win the 4th and some Democrat is going to win the 2nd. I don't know what the names are, but we'll be definitely interested in who gets elected in those races to represent the county. Public health and the sheriff and Parks and Rec and animal control. A lot of things are handled by our beaches are considered our parks, and so all of that. So let's talk about propositions. 7 ballot measures. And so we'll go through them one by one, but Proposition 1 about reproductive rights, 26 and 27 about gambling, 28 about funding arts education, 29 is another dialysis. If you've voted in the last 2 elections, I'm so tired of dialysis questions. Proposition 30 is a tax increase for the wealthy to pay for some things. And then Prop 31 is a referendum, a little bit tricky, but not really. The California legislature passed a law to ban flavored tobacco, and the tobacco companies said, no, we don't want to do that. And we're sure that the people will agree with us. And so they spent a lot of money gathering signatures to place that on the ballot. And now here it is. And the voters get the chance to veto what the legislature passed or uphold it and ban flavored tobacco. So let's go through these one by one. Proposition 1, reproductive freedom. What we're doing in California is to put this statement: the state shall not deny or interfere with an individual's reproductive freedom in their most intimate decisions, which includes their fundamental right to choose to have an abortion and their fundamental right to choose or refuse contraceptions. That would be added to the California Constitution. That's already protections that exist for Californians. However, because of the national restrictions on abortion, the Supreme Court's decision in Dobbs that rolled back Roe versus Wade, and many states have now criminalized abortion in their bans. Congress has announced that they're not done. And so if Republicans take control of Congress, they would most certainly pass a national ban. And so Michelle Steele, our incumbent Congresswoman running for re-election here, has introduced and co-sponsored with others a law that would establish a national right to life at conception. Lindsey Graham, Senator, pitched a national abortion restriction that would also impact California. So Proposition 1 asks to put this in the Constitution, and at least if there was a national ban, and we're a couple of steps away from that, but if there was a national ban, or we're one step away from the Supreme Court ruling that there's a 14th Amendment protection of life that would extend to fetal rights. So not out of the realm of possibility that this would affect Californians. So Gavin Newsom and the Democratic Party, Planned Parenthood affiliates of California, want the opportunity with a constitutional addition to have a legal challenge to that it would go to the courts. So the opponents, the Republican Party and the California Conference of Catholic Bishops, say that the abortion should not be protected and want to vote against this. So we shall see. Proposition 26 and 27, competing initiatives on gambling. Little addendum is that if both of them pass, it's possible that the one that got fewer votes would end up in court, because if two initiatives on the same question pass, then the one that gets the most votes goes into effect. And even if both of them pass, the one that gets fewer votes than the other doesn't go into effect. Now, Proposition 27 does some kind of strange things, including that it says in the law, in the actual language, it says Proposition 27 does not conflict with Proposition 26. I don't know that you get to just claim that, but judges will have to go through it. They also write their own really implementation and agency. Just page after page after page after page is included in 27, which is not usual. Usually it's a standard issue, and then the legislature actually deals with the details. So Prop 26 allows in-person roulette, dice games, sports wagering on tribal lands. So the way it is now, gambling is permitted in California only through the state lottery, passed by initiative, card rooms, horse racing, and tribal casinos. Tribal casinos were at one point the most expensive initiative campaigns. This one's going to beat it. Sports betting on professional sports or college sports is illegal in California. Tribal casinos are not able to offer roulette and games played with dice. So that's one of the provisions of 26 that would change. In 2018, the United States Supreme Court ruled that sports betting could be legal. And so states have been doing that, and a huge number of states have legalized sports betting to increase revenues to the states. Most of them don't have tribal gaming. And so they have advanced to sports gaming, and some of them on mobile devices, which is how these companies have gotten lots and lots of money to be able to try to influence California elections. So Proposition 26 would allow 4 racetracks to offer in-person sports betting. The racetracks would pay the state a share of those sports bets. Tribal casinos could offer in-person sports betting, roulette, and games played with dice that they're not currently allowed if permitted by the individual tribal gambling agreements. And then the kind of poison pill of this that a lot of people are upset about and a lot of opponents are spending a lot of money to defeat is that people or groups that believe someone is breaking these laws can file a civil lawsuit in state trial courts. And so they're concerned that the card rooms in cities are going to be sued for violating what the tribes are now allowed to do. So the folks who support this say California should have the choice to participate in sports wagering at highly regulated, safe, and experienced gaming locations in person. Obviously, the chairman of the California Nation's Indian Gaming says that well-regulated gaming industry is of the most importance. Huge number of tribes support it. Sheriff's deputy, a lot of different organizations, including those racetracks, support it. The folks who are against it involve those contract cities that have card rooms and believe that it will take away their right to do that and open the floodgate for frivolous lawsuits that will harm city revenues. If cities are sued over and over and over, which is allowed in this provision of Proposition 26. Mayor of City of Commerce says during the pandemic, California cities that depend on the revenues generated through legal gaming at card rooms have seen devastating impact of those closures. And so they're really worried that these card rooms would be adversely affected. Opponents, the card rooms, by and large, Contract Cities Association and the California Animal Welfare Association, they're worried about the racetracks getting much more popular and the horses. And we've seen massive problems at Santa Anita and other racetracks. So they're definitely involved. So Prop 27, the other one. And if you haven't seen an ad for either Proposition 26 or 27, I would love to know how you're controlling your analytics of social media and media consumption, because they're spending $440 million. $500 million has already been spent. I don't think that that's actually helping them, because it seems that the poll numbers for public support are going down as more people are being flooded with information overload and saturation. So Proposition 27, legalize sports betting and revenue for homeless prevention fund initiative. They're trying to incentivize the same way that the California lottery said, legalize the lottery for the schools. The schools will get all of this money. They are promising that homelessness prevention would be funded with the money from sports gambling. So Proposition 27, licensed tribes or gambling companies could offer online sports betting over the internet and mobile devices to people 21 years of age or older on non-tribal lands, so anywhere in California. Those offering online sports betting would be required to pay the state a share of sports bets made. It's 10% of the overall profits, but caveat, asterisk, huge. That's minus marketing, that's minus operating costs, that's minus a whole lot of things. So that 10% could be really, really reduced. In the same way that I sometimes read that blockbuster movies somehow lost money because they get to deduct all of those ancillary expenses, and suddenly nobody's getting points on the back end. So they would also, in page after page after page, 55 pages of regulation, a new state unit would be created to regulate that online sports betting, and they wrote it. So a little bit concerning when you write your own regulation. The people for it, Major League Baseball wants to see sports betting. A spokesman for the campaign talks about how the money would go to homelessness, and that all Californians should benefit from it. 21 states have already made the decision. Our state should be next. Those are the reasons that people are supporting it. A few mayors, Oakland, Long Beach, Fresno, Sacramento, that believe that they would get money for homelessness projects. A couple of tribes that didn't support Proposition 26, and then Major League Baseball. The people who are against it, lots of folks. Corporate online gambling proposition was written for the sole benefit of out-of-state gambling corporations, sending 90% of profits from sports gambling out of state, even out of country. The measure would authorize the largest expansion of gambling. And James Silva, the California Nation's Indian Gaming Association, cautions people to say, don't be fooled. These measures are not a mix to homelessness, but rather a massive expansion of gambling. So lots of folks opposed to it. A number of high-profile Democrats and the Republican Party of California, California Teachers Association, a lot of organizations that work with community groups. I imagine the California Teachers Association don't want to have to compete for attention of students with, online gambling. Okay, Proposition 28. Funding for arts education. This is a pretty simple one. Proposition 98 amended the state constitution, an initiative, so we've got to amend it with another initiative requiring a minimum percentage of the state's budget to be spent on K through 12 education, kindergarten through two-year community college, all comes out of this pot of money. So funding for arts education right now, the way it is, public schools depend on state and local budget decisions, and often that money is already spent on the essentials before you get to art education, music teachers, drama teachers, all of those, performing arts, fine arts teachers, painting and ceramics, and all of those kinds of arts, graphic design, computer programming of the arts. So what Proposition 28 would do is require an annual source of funding. It doesn't necessarily raise taxes. When times are good, the money would just be allocated. When times are bad, we'd have to find the money somewhere. So 1% of the total state and local revenue that they would receive under 98. So whatever that chunk of money is for Proposition 98, 1% has to be added that's dedicated to arts education. It has some provisions. In schools with 500 or more students, 80% of the funding has to go to employing teachers, 20% to training and material, because obviously art has some cost to materials. About $1 billion that we're talking about right now. For arts education in public schools. The folks who are for it, particularly for the historically marginalized communities in Los Angeles, it was created by former superintendent of LA USD and a former United States Secretary of Education that really believed that music, dance, theater, art, computer graphics, animation, coding, costume design, filmmaking definitely need dedicated funding. And so they are supporting this. The list of supporters is incredibly long. California Teachers Association, dance education, theater education, a whole bunch of people in the arts, professionals that want kids to actually have early exposure to these forms of education. The supporters, I already showed you that slide. The opponents, there are none listed. No one is publicly opposing this. However, just to be a little bit balanced, I'll share that there's an editorial in the Mercury News and East Bay Times editorial board issued that just talks about the ballot box budgeting, the idea that we're restricting it by initiative because the only way you can change an initiative is with another initiative. And so if the economy crashes and suddenly we don't have enough money, and California's economy is incredibly volatile, there is the concern, obviously, that we would need to make cuts in other areas. And 90% of the California budget comes from K through 14, education, higher education, health and human services, and the corrections prison system. So it's really tough to make cuts in a California budget because of that. It just takes up most of it. But they say, student enrollment is at the lowest point in 2 decades. And so there's never enough money. Take it for what you will. Personally, I'll share, I'm very reluctant to ever budget on the ballot and restrain the legislators from being able to make decisions that are in response to what's happening at the time. However, I am a big supporter for arts education. And I believe that our students benefit from having dedicated professionals in the classroom that have that expertise and really understand how to teach arts in an engaging way that helps students perform better in every way. So Proposition 29, I'm so sick of dialysis ballot measures. We've had 2 before, but we've got 600 dialysis clinics in California that serve about 80,000 patients per month. Patients' needs, obviously the clinics stay open long. They're open for 6 days a week, and they don't always have a doctor on site. And many people don't believe that they need a doctor on site. 2 private for-profit dialysis companies own about 3/4 of these licensed clinics. So you're going to see these 2 companies' names when we talk about who's funding the opposition. What Proposition 29 would do is create a law through the initiative process that can only be changed by another initiative that would legislate, regulate staffing. So chronic dialysis clinics would be required to have a physician, a nurse practitioner, or a physician's assistant on site during all physician treatment hours. Now, understand that all of these patients have expertise, have specialists that they're meeting with on a regular basis. So it's not as if they're not seeing these physicians, nurse practitioners, or physician's assistants on a regular basis. They check in with the clinics. That's already a requirement, but they're not there the entirety of the operating day. So a yes vote would mean that they're required. The increased state and local government costs are tens of millions of dollars, relatively small. Hard to say that when you're talking about such a huge amount of money, but that's California. So the folks who are supporting this are the union. They supported the last 2. They supported the measure in 2018. They supported the measure in 2020, and voters have defeated both. They say that the companies are making a tremendous amount of profit, and they should have to pay more. I don't know that would be the result. The opponents, Republican Party of California, the Chamber of Commerce, the Medical Association, the National Hispanic Medical Association, funded by the 2 for-profit companies. But they talk about the fact that the union has had 48 failed ballot initiatives across the country, and spending just a lot of money. And Proposition 18 was rejected by 60%. Proposition 23 in 2020 was rejected by 63%. So that seems to be going up as people are tired. And I do certainly sympathize with that I don't want to see another dialysis measure on my ballot. I don't think it's the appropriate place for these decisions to be made because of the complexity. The legislature could absolutely regulate this. The union could negotiate. And so I really do think that I agree with the Mercury Times and East Bay Times editorial board that says regulation of the industry is complex and best suited for the legislature rather than the ballot box. There's an idea of where you make these laws, even if it is a good one. I don't think the initiative is the place to do it, but that's what democracy is for. We'll see how the voters vote. Proposition 30. Proposition 30 provides funding for programs to reduce air pollution and prevent wildfires by increasing taxes on personal income over $2 million. So we're going to tax the wealthy to pay for subsidies for zero emission vehicles and wildfire prevention. So first, the facts, the way it is now. California has the highest personal income tax rate for its wealthiest. We've done that through past ballot measures. So if you make $1 million or more, you already pay 13.3% for those marginal income levels. $10 billion has been allocated. You may have seen a commercial with Gavin Newsom that talks about 10 billion with a B, dollars being allocated over 5 years to increase the number of zero emission vehicles, and $4 billion annually allocated to fight wildfires. So that's a tremendous investment in those two areas that Prop 30 would target. So taxpayers that are making $2 million and above would be paying 15.05%. And my concern with that is that the wealthy are incredibly able to move. They're able to move out of state. They can move to Nevada. They can move to Texas. They can move to Florida for 5 months out of the year. And we've seen lots of sports stars. We've seen lots of celebrities who have done that to avoid all of the income taxes in California. So they wouldn't just be taking that 1.75%. They would be taking the entire 13 and change percent with them that they currently pay if they left. So there's no way to really estimate what the effect would that be. It's different for every person. What's the amount that actually causes them to change their behavior and save money by going to another state. If you want a wealth tax, economists will tell you, or some economists will tell you, that a national wealth tax is the way to do that. Incredibly wealthy people are less likely to leave the nation than they are to live in one of their many other homes. So I don't know what the impact would be. The revenue collected would support zero emission vehicle programs, wildfire response and prevention activities. So we're talking about $3.5 billion to $5 billion annually, unless the legislation itself caused people to move out of state. But clearly, some people want it. Ashley McClure of Climate Health Now says this is a Robin Hood type ballot measure, taking from the rich to give to the poor. I commend Lyft. Lyft is the company that created this and funded it, has spent $20 million on campaigning for this. And so they're trying to align incentives the right way. I don't actually know, just a point of concern is I don't know if this is going to help the people Lyft thinks it's going to help. I don't know if the folks who are driving for their company, they're trying to meet the mandated, their fleet has to be zero emission by a certain date in the future. I don't know if the subsidies are going to be large enough to actually help people who are using really late model cars to drive for the company would be able to switch over to an electric vehicle by that deadline. I just do not know. That's something that we'd have to wait and see. The supporters, a number of Democrats, the California Democratic Party, Corporation of Lyft, Electrical Workers Union, and environmental voters. The folks who are against it, it's fairly rare. I can't remember seeing a Democratic governor like Gavin Newsom on the same side of an initiative as the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, the California Republican Party, and the California Teachers Association, all opposed to this. That Prop 30 is a special interest carve-out, cynical scheme devised by a single corporation to funnel state income tax revenue to their company. The president of the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association notes that we already have some of the highest taxes in the country, and air pollution could be eliminated by spending transportation dollars on freeway improvements to reduce traffic jams, and they should be paid for out of the existing general fund. One of the things that Gavin Newsom is saying in his commercials opposed to Prop 30 is, we have this massive surplus, $100 billion surplus. We're spending $10 billion on this, but California Teachers Association, Republican Party of California joined them. Those are not for a foursome that I usually see in politics. So I do think that we might want to take a look at whether or not that's something that could be better solved in another way. Legislation is always a possibility if we want to do that. There's always another way, possibly another initiative that targeted this same issue in a different way. When in doubt, leave it blank and don't vote, or do your research and vote the way you want to vote. So a Mercury News editorial board says voters should reject Prop 30, prime example of the pitfalls of budgeting by initiative. Again, this thing that I just want to bring your attention to, that budgeting by initiative doesn't give us a lot of independent policy analysis. We're making, a multi-billion-dollar decision based on a commercial or two. And so this would lock in an awful lot of spending for a very long time. So last one, referendum. So this is a photo of, all that. If you've been in a convenience store or where vape products are sold, you see these incredibly colorful, a lot of flavors that are targeted to kids for vaping, tobacco, CBD. So it's a referendum. And for those of you who've been voting for a really long time, you may wonder and remember that we used to tell you vote yes if you want to vote no, if you want to oppose something. That's all gone. So we fixed that little glitch that used to be if it was a referendum, you had to switch how you were voting. It's very confusing. So I'm happy to tell you that if you want to ban tobacco, you vote yes. And if you don't want to ban tobacco, you vote no, which is exactly how it seems. So if you have no idea what I'm talking about, that's fine. Just vote the way it looks. So Prop 31 in 2020, in the year 2020, the legislature passed, the governor signed Senate Bill 793 that banned in-person stores and vending machines from selling most flavored tobacco products and flavor enhancers. The law didn't go into effect because the tobacco companies spent a lot of money forcing it to the ballot. So a referendum allows the people, usually a lot of special interests that pay for this, collecting 500,000, 750,000 signatures to get something on the ballot. And so it is. You can veto legislation. If you don't like something that the legislature passed and the governor signed, you can veto it by placing it on the ballot, this time the 2022 ballot. So Proposition 31 just simply asks the voters whether or not they want to veto SB 793 or allow it to go into effect. So when they were researching it, the California legislature did a lot of studies, and they found that 67% of high school students and 49% of middle school students who use tobacco products in the past 30 days reported using a flavored tobacco product. The California Teachers Association is behind this for a reason. They're seeing an epidemic of vaping, of kids that are really using flavored tobacco that gummy bears and cotton candy and apple, and certainly some adults are using those flavors as well, but the colors and flavors are definitely targeting kids and getting them addicted. So Proposition 31 would ban those sales, fruit, mint, menthol, honey, chocolate, or vanilla, and a tobacco product flavor enhancer creates a flavor when added to a tobacco company. Would charge a $250 penalty for each violation. It would hopefully eliminate at least the legal sale of this. You can't always change behavior. Budget effects. This is one of the problems of sin taxes. Because we tax tobacco tax revenue, trying to de-incentivize the use, it means when we legally reduce that dependency and addiction, the funding goes down. So we don't know how much the funding would go down, but last year the state made $2 billion from tobacco tax revenue. Obviously, if people are using those tobacco products less, the amount of money would go down. But hopefully healthcare costs would go down as well. It's a complicated system, but we're not sure. So the people who want you to support Proposition 31, Gavin Newsom, Big Tobacco has been targeting our kids, trying to hook them on tobacco products. It's time to stand up to Big Tobacco. American Cancer Society, Action Network, the tobacco industry has shown how it will go to any length to deceive the public about its deadly product. We're confident that California voters will see through this ploy to continue to lure kids into a lifetime of tobacco addiction. California fought Big Tobacco and won, says the sponsor of the bill, who is obviously very disappointed that this referendum qualified. The shameless industry is a sore loser, and it's relentless. It wants to keep killing people with its candy, fruit, mint, and menthol flavored poison. The adults who are hooked on nicotine aren't enough for Big Tobacco. It wants our kids too. Now, the folks, California Teachers Association, Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, the American Cancer Society, Gavin Newsom, the folks who are against it say it's already illegal for kids to use flavored tobacco, and so you shouldn't limit what adults can use. Okay. There's also the exemption for hookah, expensive cigars and flavored pipe tobacco from the prohibition. It always change that prohibition if you wanted to through state law. A referendum doesn't mean that you have to have another initiative to change this law if there are complexities or unintended consequences we haven't considered. The opponents, no surprise, the tobacco companies are opponents. I've also seen some no on Prop 31 on some of the convenience stores that obviously think it would impact their sale of vaping products, but that's what they say. So that's your ballot. So happy voting. I hope that you will attend candidate forums. I hope you'll come on campus and meet the candidates on